Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our panel, Building the Future, Technology, Strategy, and Innovation. I'm Gavin Jenkins, Head of Content for Roads and Bridges. This panel will be recorded and it will be up tomorrow on roadsbridges.com. And with me on this panel, we have Ed Shappell, who is the Vice President of Strategy Technology at WSB, Kevin Garcia, General Manager of Civil Specialty Solutions at Trimble, and Aaron Chamberlin, U.S. HEAP Area 4 Director. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you. All right, so we're going to be talking about technology here, and the job site is data-rich, tech-enabled, and more connected than ever. So let's start big picture. How do you each see the industry evolving? We'll start with you, Ed.
Sure, I think that you're seeing a bigger focus on data, right, which is the right place to be focused. Technology is great, but in our industry, the data is what really matters, the quality of the data, the accuracy of the data. And I think the other thing that I see, right, in the industry is that the technology is becoming easier to use and easier to help manage a lot of that data. And so I think that's what's driving a little more of the adoption now, is that it used to be a little harder to use the technology with the data and the accuracy levels that we need in our industry. But that's changed, and now you're seeing a lot more adoption just because of ease of use.
Yeah, and I'll add the data, certainly like Ed said, but I think the digitization of that data. So there's a lot less, or at least it's trending in the right direction, a lot less paper documents, note cards, sticky notes, and a lot of the stuff, we've got MDMS systems now for material delivery. We've got point cloud scanning for digital twins. You've got design and model all happening in a connected data environment. And then I also think that technology, kind of as Ed alluded to, it's helping retain staff members, that they see a career path now. It's also attracting a next generation of employees, which is huge. So that, the big whole kind of, there's a path now for a worker who used to think, is my end all be all a dozer operator or a shovel operator, and now they're seeing how the value of what they do brings value to the overall site and how it contributes to overall cost.
Yeah, same question? Or
Yeah.
do you have another one?
No. How do you see it evolving? Do you disagree with anything said here?
No, I definitely. Again, I come at it from a state DOT perspective. Most of our states right now are really struggling with I would say the biggest struggle we have is adapting to the changes in IT strategy. So information technology at most state DOTs is not exactly cutting edge. It might take us 5 or 6 years in some cases for a lot of these bigger states to run IT projects. So at state of the art today, we're where an IT project started 5 years ago. Well, nobody had even heard of ChatGPT 5 years ago, right? That wasn't a thing. So we're always continuously behind the 8 ball. So really, I would say that's one of the biggest strategies or biggest hurdles that we have right now. Is again, you have state IT policies, you have federal guidance and federal regulation that regulates what we can and cannot do with projects. So I think that's one of the biggest roadblocks that we currently have is both policy and implementation on technology.
I think that's a really good foundation to start this discussion. So let's dive in here. Ed, how do you balance innovation with scalability in your design operations?
It's really about looking at it, I would say, one workflow at a time, right? I think with the way we look at how we want to use technology and innovation, what workflow is the biggest, let's say, return on investment or biggest bang for the buck? And you want to scale up that workflow, right? One workflow at a time, and then you can start to connect these workflows. So that's kind of how we approach it. It's easier for our folks to learn, but I think it's also logical. Like when you approach it that way, you solve one workflow, it's easy to sell the value of, hey, this is the more modernized workflow, this is the benefit to you as a user of this workflow. Then they're going to buy into the future workflows that we are improving on.
All right, so my question for you, Kevin, would be, Trimble is deeply embedded in infrastructure. How do you see technology reshaping delivery from design to construction?
Yeah, it goes back a little bit to what I said earlier. A lot of it is digitized now, where before it was a very manual process. But I also see new technology introduction, like keeping up with all the stuff that's coming and even the vast amounts of data that we can generate. Like what's useful data, what's information. I think there's a classifier there that needs to happen. Data for the sake of data, you can't make an informed decision on. And so we look at our, for example, digital site management. We need inputs at the right time, at the right stakeholder. Having things stream into a common data environment, you don't have to make that classification anymore. Everything is there. What do I need as this persona? Am I a project manager? Am I a foreman? Am I an operator? Am I a surveyor? Connecting those people, making it real time, that's a really big push for us, and we're where we see the industry moving quickly right now.
Excellent, all right. All right, so Aaron, from your role at HEAP, what's the biggest challenge in modernizing project delivery for state agencies?
Loaded question, but I think there's a lot of problems, right, and a lot of difficulties. I think actually one of the biggest ones, again, is scaling solutions. So, in project delivery, right, it's not like one group of professionals. We have environmental folks, you have right-of-way folks, you have land surveyors, you have engineers, and all these different disciplines. You have 30 or 40 different major sub-disciplines that are working on these major projects. All of them have established workflows for that. So if you go throwing new technology into one, it's like hucking a grenade into into room, and everything gets messed up by throwing something new into there. So it's introducing something new slowly, and then get everybody else around the table to look at that and go, okay, that's scary, but I see where you're going with that, and I'm willing to then take that process, whether that is implementing processes of BIM. Or other geospatial workflows that we're starting to see become more mainstream. And a lot of it can be institutional, so there can be, well, that's always been something that's a tool that I've always used, right? We have to kind of break down a lot of those silos within some of these agencies. Particularly in government, we have divisions, right? There's division of land surveys, there's division of right-of-way, there's design division, there's the bridge design division. So institutionally, we've looked at ourselves and siloed ourselves in those ways. And kind of having to break that down to do digital delivery is really, I think, a big challenge for a lot of large organizations.
All right, my next question is for the panel. And so what technology is out there that you think is overrated, and what technology out there is underrated? We'll start with you, Ed.
Oh yeah, let's make Ed go first.
Here.
I like that.
I mean, I would tell you AI is a little overrated right now in our industry just because it's new, and in our industry, speed, let's say, and getting to an answer quickly is not as important as getting it right. And so I think that you still have to do a lot of QA/QC, right, when you're using AI tools, but there is the potential there, right? So I think that my argument would be, you can integrate data and automate workflows without AI, and brings a lot of value without having to worry about, okay, I now have this black box of AI where I have to check every answer it's spitting out at me. I can take what I know, I can take the workflows that I know, like Aaron said. If we're integrating and automating some of those, we already know them. We know what the outcome is, we can see the inputs, we know what the outputs are. That's more predictable, right? It's a little unpredictable to start looking at AI and how it's going to generate information. It's a little overhyped because we have to make sure it's quality information. And I think all have seen that it doesn't always give you the right answer, and we can't be that reliant upon it until it does give us that right answer.
Well, I'm going to hedge a little bit first and say overrated's hard because I think the level of the contractor, the size of the government agency, the region you are in the world, one region's overrated is another region's underrated, it's interesting, which makes it hard to do product development. If I was going to pick maybe a no overhyped right now, I think the world really wanted autonomous machines. Like, everyone go there. I don't want operators anymore. And I think everyone has soft pedaled that, but there are markets of the world who have a severe labor shortage and they just need it. But that's one I think that we've kind of cooled off on and went more towards data. What can I get quickly and in real time? For underrated, I think there's a lot of really good entry-level solutions. Everyone goes out with this, like, I don't want buyer's remorse, so I'm gonna buy the best in class, and they overdo it. They overshoot it. It's too much for what they're trying to do. Like Aaron said earlier, you can't throw 3 things into a room, maybe one at a time, pull along, get adoption, but buy something that scales. Like, okay, this is where you are today. Can you add layers to it without having to completely reinvest? I think having scalable solutions is very, very underrated.
I'm going to go another way, and it's going to make the software guy mad. Actually, in my opinion, it's cloud. So we've seen a lot of state DOTs. Some were very slow to adopt cloud. Some jumped right into it. We're seeing some of the states that jumped into it pretty quickly actually come back out of it, because after you start to look at the long-term costs of some of the cloud compute, it's actually more expensive to push things to cloud than it is to run it in your own data center. That, in a lot of cases, again, going back to legacy IT, a lot of state DOTs own their own data center effectively. So we have our own cloud. We don't need to go rent it from Microsoft or Amazon. It's great for Jeff Bezos, but at the end of the day, it's not great for taxpayers. So we're starting to see that shift back to edge compute and to having stuff in our own data centers, where we can control the record retention policy. We can control what the costs are for ingress and egress out of cloud. And especially now with some of the GPU compute coming on board, we're seeing the cost for that from Amazon and from AWS, AWS and Azure and Google be extremely expensive for GPU compute. Whereas, we can buy the hardware, rack it in the data center, and then you can run it all day long, and we've got a known entity of cost, and we're just paying the power for it, as opposed to paying per GPU per hour for some of these higher end workflows.
All right, so we've talked about vision, we've talked about big picture stuff. Now let's talk about execution. So Ed, how do you ensure standardization across tools and platforms?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think the biggest piece, like I talked about before, is you can't eat the whole elephant. So we typically will take a workflow, we want to innovate on that workflow, improve it, and that there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just, let's say, the data, right? Tools you're going to use for flow. There are policies and procedures that have to be updated. There are certifications that have to be updated. So it's a lot of work to get to a standard, right? And we do need to focus on that more. It's very hard even for our customers, like the DOTs. Each district within a state will be a little bit different, so it's hard to standardize. But if you start showing improvement on, let's say, a single workflow, and here's why this new standard is better for you to adopt, we really will get more people to standardize, but they have to understand what the benefit is, and they have to know what's in it for me. Like, if it doesn't benefit me, why am I going to standardize, right, on a standard? And that's where the industry's going, and I think it's the right approach. People aren't going to buy in until you show them what the value is.
Okay, so Kevin, what role does open data and interoperability play in Trimble's connected construction vision?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first and foremost, all data is customer data first. What they agree to share is where kind of the rest of us can benefit from. There's a lot of learnings out there, but we know that Trimble can't build everything for everyone. And so Connect is our platform. It's meant to be open. It's meant to be scalable. We also have now ISO standards that dictate interoperability. So just like customers run a mixed fleet of equipment, they also run a mixed fleet of technology. And to expect that all Trimble things come to a Trimble core and all things from our competitors go to their core, customers can't work that way. It's inefficient, it's expensive. So we're seeing now ISO standards that dictate that brand X talks to brand Y, talks to brand Z, all with a common, say, base station on site. The world sees it. We have long been brand agnostic in our machine control side. Now we're also pretty data agnostic. The number of data file types and extensions you can ingest in the ecosystems now is huge. It's rare that you find a file you can't ingest, and that's where the world has to go, because not everyone works in the same six-sided box.
All right, so Aaron, how are DOTs approaching data governance?
Again, loaded question. You go to 50 DOTs and you're going to get 50 different standards that we're all using, right? But I think one strategy that we're starting to see some success with is, for example, the pooled funds projects. So we have a BIM for bridges pooled fund. We have a BIM for roadways pooled fund. We now have a UAS data standards pooled fund that's getting picked off. So the idea behind these is, instead of 50 states working in a vacuum, where all of us have our own slightly different flavor of something, yes, we're all using largely the same authoring software, and we're all using the same higher level data standards, whether it's ISO 19650 or something else. But again, you're going to get, as from a contractor standpoint, hey, I do work in Nevada, and I get one set of standards, and then I go to work in Arizona, and yeah, it's in MicroStation or it's in AutoCAD format, but it looks completely differently. The line styles, the levels, everything's completely different. So I think trying to get more and more unification on the products that we're putting out digitally. We didn't have this problem 40 years ago when you were plotting prints to a 2D, now it's a PDF, but pre that it was actually a hard copy, right? a line stroke looked like a line stroke. Didn't matter what the standard was or even the CAD platform that it was drafted in. But those things matter now because now you're talking about metadata attributes that are associated with a 2D or a 3D polyline from a CAD platform. So that's where I think trying to get more and more of the different DOTs working kind of in harmony with each other so that eventually it will actually save everybody money, because when our contractors are bidding our projects, they don't have the problem of knowing, oh shoot, I've got to have 50 different experts that can all do work in all these different states to be able to ensure that we're bidding properly. We can unify that. And then also hopefully streamline the supply chain for it as well.
I feel like a lot of the questions are going to be kind of loaded because there isn't that unity or standardization across tools, platforms, different parts of the industry. And so having said that, I ask you, what does, and this is for the panel, what does a connected project look like in 2026?
Started with me. Yeah, there are two really big gaps I would say in our industry. One is when you're moving from pre-construction and design into construction, we typically do have a gap between, let's say, the designers, right, owners, and then the people building it, which is our contractors. And you've got to close that gap. So one of the key we focus on is digital delivery. How do we close that gap? How do we make sure the data coming from the owner and the designer, right, is more friendly, right, more usable for those contractors, right? How do we improve that data that they're getting? Because that's going to help with schedule, cost, all kinds of things, risk management. And then there's another big gap in terms of when you're done with construction and you have to go, right, as a road owner into maintenance and asset management. That's a hard gap to close as well because you've finished the project. Now you've got to take all that information from that project and figure out, okay, I just built this 5-mile road, but now I got to manage it, and it's going to cost me X number of dollars over the next 30 years. And we're not doing a good enough job of taking data from the project and saying, all right, how do we optimally manage this for 30 years? And that's the bigger cost. That project cost may be $1 million. It's $30 million for 30 years of maintenance and paving and milling and all the work that's got to be done on that road. So that's kind of what we see as kind of that connected or better way to connect, right, the project delivery and how we deliver projects. Think about it as we're not delivering projects anymore, we're delivering assets. And that's really the mentality that other regions in the world take is, I'm not worried about this project cost as much as the next 30 years of what this is going to cost me.
I think a lot of what Ed said is already accurate. I would probably say when we think about just what is that design to construct to own, operate, maintain life cycle, I think there's really good digital workflows within each one. There's a good design workflow, there's a good model workflow, there's a good construction workflow, and then there's a good own, operate, maintain workflow. The trick really for all of us is to how are all of those the same, not finding the gaps between design and model. Like there is a definitive difference between the two. Sometimes the owner thinks they've given you a constructible model and they haven't. So doing better there, but and we talked about this before the panel, intent of design into what's produced that's the gap that's probably the hardest to close. But the longer we're at this digital construction workflow, the more experience owners get or engineers and architects get, the gap's closing, quarter by quarter, year by year.
Yeah, I think another wrench to throw in that is actually the legal aspect of a lot of it, right? So the technical aspect, I think, is actually a pretty easy problem, right? We know how to make things so that we can interoperate them. We can do that really easily today. Kind of the elephant in the room is, okay, well now I'm going to give you all my CAD files. Okay, are those clean, right? When I plotted it, right, I can turn off all the garbage layers, right? I equate it to like I tell my kid to clean their room. Did they actually clean the room? Or did they just shovel the stuff in the closet and then all the stuff is in the closet, right? That's really the analogy that we see with a lot of the CAD deliverables that we get is like, ooh, this isn't really that clean. It looked clean when you PDF plotted it, but it's really not. So there's kind of a fundamental shift there, and then that rolls over into the contractor because now the contractor just saw your your son's dirty room, and they're like, hey, I see stuff in here that this isn't matching what I thought, and so I think there's a lot of issues like that we have yet to really flush out with respect to digital delivery. And a lot of it, I think, is the legal aspect that is going to be one of the tougher things to change because changing laws is a lot harder than changing just a policy process of, yeah, we're going to give you this instead of this now.
Okay, so let's dive into the human element, if we will. Ed, how do you approach workforce training as these new tools emerge? for WSB and your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually easy in my opinion because I think the industry has to embrace some of the technology and innovation because it does draw our younger workforce to the industry. And I think that's one of the things our firm is doing is we're trying to promote that, hey, if you want to learn how to use AI, right, in our industry, we are doing that. If you want to learn how to use some of these cool LiDAR imagery, 3D model tools, right, we want to get that interest, right, at that level. And it's not easy, right? It's harder to take the existing employees that have been doing it in an existing way and get them to upskill to some of these new innovations and tools. Again, it all goes back to what's in it for them, right? And I would argue it's two main things. One is we have to show them it's easier. Anytime you make somebody's job easier, they're going to be more willing to do something, right? And learn it and train on it. But I also think it's about, are we really bringing value to them, right? Like, I believe that we can make our people more efficient by integrating, automating, using some of these tools. I want them focused on the harder problems. There's a lot of problems that we deal with, all of us deal with today, where if we eliminated those, we'd be focused on much higher level problems, and those bring more value, right? And that's what I want my folks focused on, right? And frankly, that makes you more valuable as an employee, right? Makes you more valuable to the industry, if you're able to do that, right? And so we sell the value of, this is how you're going to become more valuable to the industry. In our industry, folks move around a lot, so it is an incentive, right, to have a skill set that you can take to the industry that everybody wants, right? And it's that mix of domain expertise and how to use the latest innovations and tools.
All right, so Kevin, how does Trimble ensure that its technology roadmap meets the needs of DOTs and contractors?
Yeah, I think it all starts with voice of customer. That's the funnel that we all strive to listen to the most. Trimble has a number of forums. We have industry events like this, like CONEXPO this week, where you're going to talk to hundreds or thousands of them at one place. We, Trimble, distribute our stuff through a channel. So we have 120 plus dealers around the world that talk to DOTs and customers every single day, dozens of them every single day. They hear a lot of common needs. They funnel those back to us. They have a direct path back into us. We have even online submittals. Customers can say, I really wish Trimble would, and send us stuff. And then it becomes a rank of what's possible versus what do we have the resources to develop, what has the largest opportunity for us, both from a financial perspective or an industry wellness perspective. And you're ranking those things all the time and trying to do what's right. And then a lot of times we will have a regional flair on that. So a place like Norway is doing some pretty advanced things that the rest of the world is not doing yet. Our solutions for them are not going to be the same that might be for someone that's just embracing technology in a different part of the world. So again, it goes back to what I said earlier too. We can't be everything to everyone as much as we would like to. So enabling them to do some of it themselves, like our platform's open. If you want to develop a widget and leverage some of the data in Connect to do it yourself, we also do that so that if we're not there, someone can do it.
I want to be like Norway. What are they doing that's so special?
A lot of fish in their diet. No, they were one of the first really heavy adopters, and Aaron both know this. They really embraced digital construction from the beginning, the common data environment from the beginning. They don't have 50 states doing it 50 ways. They have one country doing it one way, and everyone walks that same line, which makes life a little bit easier in one regard. It's also hard. They push suppliers and vendors and things like that really hard too to meet the needs of that. But it hasn't scaled to the rest of the world yet because it requires, like we talked about earlier, 50 states, sometimes just in a state even, or divisions within a contract office. It's really hard to get one common alignment, and they stuck to that and made it a North Star.
Right. So Aaron, how do DOTs prepare workforce for the next generation of digital project delivery?
Again, very loaded question. It's very difficult because like what we're kind of shifting to is something that's really not being taught in college today, right? You've got civil engineering students that are coming out of college. They know how to do the basics, but really this new environment we're shifting into, we're doing part data science, part geospatial, and then part engineering. Right? They've been trained on one of those. Most of them have never used GIS, or if they have, they had like a class on GIS. We're introducing things like data science concepts into them with data schemas and data standards that is something fundamentally foreign to most engineering students. And again, it's we're having to kind of, again, Kay, you're coming on, you're learning this stuff from almost from scratch, right? You have some engineering background, but now we're going to sprinkle all data science and some of these other topics in there. I think that's one of the big shortcomings right now in the current education system, and we're starting to see some solutions in that space. I actually teach part-time at a community college in Southern California, Santiago Canyon College. It's actually, Trimble just sponsored our tech lab there. So thank you, Trimble. And as part of that, it's the first of its kind in California. So we have a 4-year degree, and it's a hybrid between some engineering, some land surveying, and data science. So we're going to be teaching people to become these digital geospatial professionals that have engineering, land surveys, and data science backgrounds to be able to fuse that stuff together. Because really that's the tech stack now that we're seeing unveil before us. And we need to develop more professionals that have that really diverse skill set to be able to come in and be that workforce of the future.
All right, let's stick with you for a second then, Aaron, because my next question for the panel kind of is a follow-up to that question, and it's just what skills does the next generation of engineers need to have?
Yeah. Again, you better know how to, again, GIS is really crucial, right? I think you have to know, I mean, our industry is fundamentally geospatial. We're building roads, right? The vertical industry is very different. Everything's an assumed coordinate system. Okay, we're at 0, 0, 0 and go, right? The where part is very, very crucial, right? Coordinate systems, geoids, epics, the stuff that's traditionally only taught to land surveyors, that's become really crucial for civil engineers to know, and even the environmental staff. We have all these other different professionals that we're all playing in the same sandbox that is a fundamentally geospatial sandbox. We have to have everybody that's playing in the sandbox know the rules of the sandbox, which is that geospatial piece. And then again, I think the data science piece is really critical as well. It's about fundamentally understanding, okay, well, why can't I just like change the schema for this? I want it to look different on this map. Well, okay, if you do that, you break everybody else's workflow that we've developed now down this entire downstream process. That's why you can't just make your own layer for that new item, right? You got to go to the data governance committee and say, hey, we need this new layer for this thing, get it approved. Okay, we're going to build a new schema for this whole thing that's going to work, and that way our data can actually continue to work through the process correctly.
I think that was a really, really good answer. I would agree completely. The GIS has been my number one. I think there's a lot of other things, like just as an engineer, I came out of a civil engineering degree, and I was not prepared for. I knew how to his point, you know how to design a road. You understand maybe some fundamentals about soils, and but what I didn't understand is how it's constructed. So getting some time with some construction background, like what does a contractor need to be able to execute the task? What does clash detection even look like? What is project phasing, and why can't I design it this way? Why can't they build it the way I designed it? I think some exposure would be really, really critical along the way.
Yeah, I like that one. I mean, I think I would sum that up as I want folks that have a willingness to learn, right? And I'll give you a couple examples. We want folks that are designing to actually take their design out with some of the field staff. So whether it's surveyors, contractors, construction teams, they have to deal with your data. And the big problem today is a lot of designers don't understand how their data is either good, bad, or indifferent because they don't see how it's being used. And so there's a lot of effort by a lot of DOTs, for instance, to take their designers and bring them out to projects and show them how that's being used. And you have to be willing to learn that, right? And vice versa, right? I don't think sometimes surveyors or construction teams understand the challenges that the designer's going through. So there's a lot of willingness to learn, right? And it's been traditionally a very siloed, right, industry, right? We design, we don't do survey or construction. I survey, I don't do design. And now it's a little bit more blended where it's like, no, you have to understand some basics about each person's role, what their job is or is not, and then what you're expected to do, right? And how do you give that other person feedback if you're not getting what you need? So I think that's improving. I see a lot of state DOTs, for example, going that way and trying to bring their different groups together across all their divisions, so.
All right, it's time to look ahead then. So Ed, what will a fully digital infrastructure project look like by 2030?
I mean, we talk about it a lot, but it's digital data being used throughout the life cycle. So a fully digital project to me is, I even go into my planning and my program stage. So if I'm a DOT as an example, I want to be able to look at my existing road network data and say, how do I use this existing data to plan the projects for the next 5 years? how does that help me improve that planning, right, and that program management? And then when I go into design and pre-construction, that should be digital, and it should be focused on lots of experience on previous projects. How do I improve and continue to improve on better designs that give me better outcomes, right, in terms of lower costs for maintenance and asset management? So it's this full digital cycle of, I've got to have better information. We talk about models of legal documents, so we'll be moving more towards BIM and 3D models for our civil infrastructure, right? A lot of DOTs are trying to go that direction, right? And they're making good progress. And that will help, right? Just better data throughout each of these, right, handoffs that we talked about, right? If I have good data that's going through each of these groups, everyone gets happy. I have a great quote from a DOT, I believe it's Kentucky DOT, Jim Fisher, I'm giving you credit. But he said, look, if I have good data on my road network, everybody in the DOT is coming to me because they all need it, no matter what their job is in the DOT. You could be in the legal department and need my good data.
Right. So, Kevin, AI, automation, how does that redefine the relationship between humans and machines on the job site?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about kind of automation. I think automation is the right word. Autonomous is not. Automation, we're going to continue to see technology automate the really repetitive tasks that a machine can do or that a computer can do. For example, I have a paving background, and a paver operator has a lot to think about up there. They're managing the trucks delivering feed. They're looking for things from a safety perspective. They're running the wing walls on the paver to keep the feed consistent, and that the auger box is full, and that the guys in the back are consistent, or my speed is consistent. There's a lot that goes into making quality. But what are the top 3 that they should be focusing on? And then can Trimble do everything else, as an example? So we liken it to what we do, we call it task assistance or automated assistance. Vehicles you did everything, and then we got cruise control, and then we got automatic high beams, and then we got adaptive cruise control, lane warning, lane departure, automatic steering, everything built on itself to now where some models of cars will pseudo drive themselves. That's what we will see in the construction space. We've seen it for a number of years. We'll continue to see it. We also see technology getting things like LiDAR, ground penetrating radar, radar. All that stuff was incredibly expensive even 5 or 6 years ago. Now we're getting to packages that are form factors that work in the construction environment, that are affordable, that feed data in a format that can be consumed. And so we see that now taking shape in the construction environment as well to improve safety, increase efficiency. Humans won't go away for a very long time in the automated space. And even when we take on more and more of the tasks, someone still has to tell that machine what to do. So you're upskilling that employee to now, okay, replicate what you needed to do as an operator, teach the machine what does it need to do. Someone has to give it the design, someone has to give it the parameters, someone has to give it the job parameters. That will still continue to be a thing for a long time.
You're more optimistic than some of the people on the internet about the humans being around for years to come with AI. But
I think we've seen this week a lot of, there's already, and I don't want to be the naysayer, there's already a little bit of AI fatigue, right? I mean, it did a lot of cool stuff really early. There's a bunch of people nodding here. Like, it does some great stuff. It saves me hours a week, but we're far from, it can't do this. It's not going to come sit with our customers in a venue and understand what are their pain points and how do I deliver to solve them. We're far from that.
Absolutely. All right, Aaron. So what should the next generation of engineers understand about this industry?
Yeah, it's not going to be the way it was. So again, this digital delivery thing that we're all embarking on right now is actually a bigger change, I think, fundamentally, than when we went from hand drafting to computer drafting, right? There's structurally much more change happening there than that change. And that was a big change. And back when I first started, this dates me a little bit. I first started my career in 2006. Talking to the guys who were around when we first implemented CAD, in a lot of these states, they were like, man, it was like the world was on fire when we did that, when we took the drafting tables away and put these gigantic computers down. That's the same thing we're having happen right now with digital delivery. We're fundamentally changing a lot of these processes, and I think that is going to continue. I think, like they said, that 5 years from now, is project delivery going to look significantly different today? No, I think we're going to have a lot of incremental improvements happening. I think there are going to be pockets where certain processes get really advanced, and then we're going to have other laggers that are going to really be much behind that. So fundamentally, it's not going to be very different. But I think the biggest skill set that's going to be needed is going to be a willingness to learn and then a willingness to adapt. So adaptability, I think, is going to be one of those skill sets that I can't really understate enough how important that is going to be as we embark on this, like I said, a bigger transformation than what happened when we went from hand drafting to computer-aided drafting.
Let's stick with you. As a way of having closing remarks, summarize in one sentence what will define the future of infrastructure innovation.
I would say, automation is going to be really big. That's more than one sentence already, sorry. Epic fail. Automation, I think robotics, and then I think enhanced safety, I think are the three big items that I see driving everything right now. So I think fundamentally everything that we're going to do is going to be kind of derived around those things that are all going to kind of increase efficiency, increase safety.
Yeah, I will. Even though I just said I think there's some AI fatigue, AI will play a significant role in the future. We do have more data at our fingertips than ever before. We can't ingest all of it. It will help us make informed decisions. It will play a space. Maybe not making pretty slides, in PowerPoint like it can do right now, but there is a place for that. It certainly will affect where we're going.
Yeah, and I would just say that I believe that innovation will be leading the market. You'll be seeing opportunities that your competition isn't seeing, and that you're able to take advantage of those opportunities. So market leaders will be innovators, and there will be a natural competitiveness to be in that front position.
All right, so audience, do you have any questions? No? Okay, all right. So that does it. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this panel, and thank you to all of those in the audience. Thank you for your insights, and thank you for joining us. This video will be on roadsbridges.com tomorrow, and that is it. I'm Gavin Jenkins, head of content for Roads and Bridges. Thank you for joining.